Hi there, and welcome to This Day in History for January 1st. Happy New Year. January 1st is the first day of the year in the Gregorian calendar, 364 days remaining to the end of the year, 365 if it happens to be a leap year, as 2024 is. This is known as New Year's Day since it's the beginning of the year. Today's word is eisegesis. Eisegesis is a noun that means the interpretation of a text by reading into it one's own ideas. That's what the dictionary says about it, but what in the world does that mean? Well, let's elaborate a little bit. Eisegesis is a situation where, as someone reads, studies, or sets about to explain a text, that they interpret or explain it according to their own understanding, interjecting their own ideas or bias into the interpretation. This term is usually used in relation to religious texts or ancient texts, but eisegesis can also be seen in relation to modern times with current information. For example, say a media figure or content creator gets a bit of news and then shares it from the perspective of their own bias or their own agenda. Whether deliberately or inadvertently, this approach distorts the original message, giving anywhere from a slightly to entirely different meaning than that of the original material. Again, eisegesis is the interpretation of a text by reading into it one's own ideas. The word eisegesis comes to us from a combination of Greek words that meant to lead or guide and in or into. To lead or guide into. First known use of the word eisegesis is in the 1800s. Eisegesis. Eisegesis was requested by YouTube viewer at Adela Jones 9887. Thank you, Adela. We'll be looking at exegesis tomorrow. Remember, if you have a word you'd like us to examine in this Word of the Day segment, drop it in the comments. We'll take a look at it. And with that, there's been a lot of fiddling and tweaking with calendar systems over the last 2,000 plus years, 2,000 and beyond, really. Started out with what you could call a lunar calendar based simply on observation of the moon, the way it waxes and wanes, and its placement, appearance relative to the stars. Nothing formal. This will have been used in prehistoric times. Then early Roman civilization developed a 10-month calendar, which they credited to their legendary first king and culture hero, Romulus. Maybe Romulus did come up with that first 10-month calendar, or maybe he just got credit for it because they didn't have any good, accurate records about its origin. I don't know, but the 10-month calendar. Ancient Greeks followed a lunar cycle of 12 29.5-day months, and apparently this made sense to the Roman Republic as they began to follow this method with only slight variations in what we would call the calendar of the Roman Republic. The Roman Republic calendar added a feature where some months would have 31 days, others would have 30 days, and February would have 28 days, more similar to what we have now. In 304 BC, a fellow named Naz Flavius made some more changes to the calendar, which included the custom of publishing the calendar in advance of the month. This allowed for a more consistent calendar for official business, good for planning. In 46 BC, Julius Caesar made some more changes to the way we keep calendars, adding a few more 31-month days and a leap day every fourth year in order to bring the Roman calendar more into alignment with the solar year. This, by the way, is what we call the Julian calendar after Julius Caesar, the Julian calendar. In 1582, Pope Gregory XIII introduced a tweak to the Julian calendar, introducing the calendar we know now as the Gregorian calendar, the calendar we currently use, in which I reference every day when I tell you what day of the year it is and how many days are left in the year. A minor tweak, but one towards more accuracy. The Julian calendar was based on the idea that the average year was exactly 365.25 days long, 365 and a quarter days long. And the Gregorian calendar increased that ever so slightly, almost imperceptibly. How could you even notice? But they did increase it to 365.2425 days long. How did they even know that? I don't know. No idea, but there you go. It was adopted bit by bit, the Gregorian calendar, worldwide as far as I know, which makes planning and record keeping a lot easier and more continuous. That said, sometimes when you look up events, a reference might specify whether this took place according to a Julian calendar or a Gregorian calendar. The adoption of the Gregorian calendar wasn't instant. It was incremental across the world. Scotland recognized January 1st as the start of the year, beginning January 1st, 1600, in the Julian calendar, and before that, March 25th was considered the beginning of the year, in Scotland anyway. Anno Domini and Anno Mundi is a whole nother discussion, maybe for another time. But on January 1st, 1700, in the Julian calendar, Russia began using the Anno Domini era instead of the Anno Mundi era of the Byzantine Empire. Engineer and inventor Stanford Fleming had promoted the concept of a worldwide standard time zone system, a prime meridian, and the use of a 24-hour clock for accurate timekeeping. And on January 1st, 1885, 25 nations adopted his proposal for standard time and time zones. Today we talked a lot about timekeeping, calendars, and such as that, but other things have happened on New Year's Day in the past, and if you'd like to see what else I talked about in regards to January 1st, I'll include a link to one of those episodes. Today's song is Auld Lang Syne. You're likely to have heard it or maybe even sung along with it at midnight as one year passes into another. This is from an old Scottish poem by Robert Burns, written in 1788, set to the tune of an old folk song in 1799. As we know, words and language evolve and change over time, so these 234 to 235 or so years later, the phrase for Auld Lang Syne could be loosely translated to mean for the sake of old times. You're most likely to hear Auld Lang Syne at midnight as one year ends and another begins, but it's also heard any time one era ends at the threshold of the beginning of a new one, such as at funerals, graduations, and at the end of a significant event as a farewell. Be sure to remember what has gone before as you move into what is to come. I've found a lovely version of this song for you, placed a link in the description. Auld Lang Syne.